Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWEG. We're so glad that you are all joining us today for this wrap up of our Hope experiment that we have been doing for the last few months for the summer. We have some women from the team that has been behind this that are joining us today, and some of our Hope ambassadors, as they're called, to share some experiences. And I hope those of you who are joining us will share your experiences that you've had with the Hope experience as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Lisa Tingy and Catherine Esslinger and Meredith Gardner, who are going to talk about the Hope experiment.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay. So are you pulling is it already up? Okay, there we go. I can't really see. Okay, I'm just gonna go. So I just want to briefly explain for those of you who are just joining us for the first time what the Hope experiment is. When we looked around at the beginning of the summer, summertime is often a time of where we have more flexible schedules and we have, late nights and a time of gathering. And when we looked around at the beginning of the summer, we were noticing that people were not only feeling apathy about the upcoming election, but they were feeling real dread. It wasn't a very positive feeling. And so we decided we wanted to capture what people were feeling in that moment and then give our own prescription for hope and see what might happen. So the Hope experiment was born. We, on the next slide, we kind of laid out what our goals were for the whole experiment. We wanted, like I said, take advantage of that slightly more flexible summer schedule and help create a hope protocol that would fit seamlessly into our lives. Summertime can be a super busy time, but we decided, so that's why we knew each of these actions that we were asking you to do had to be very easy to carry along and fit into our lives. And we wanted to show that not only help our members to be active peacemakers, but to show them that active peacemaking is really just a way of life and that it really begins with us. So half of our recommendations were really inward focused. We asked you to listen to the Proclaim Peace podcast, to read books that were about hope, or watch movies that depicted times in history that helped us to feel hope. To read, we had a devotional that we recommended that you read that was all about, seeing each other as children of God and what that means for how we interact with each other. And then finally, the last inward action was to follow really reliable local news to help you connect that way. So each of these things we were hoping would help you to see how to become active peacemakers, to really encourage that in your own introspective way. And then the other half of the activities were related to reaching out. So we encouraging our participants to connect with their communities. So we had things like attend a community event, gather your neighbors for a potluck, volunteer with a local organization, attend an MWEG event locally, or hold a meaningful conversation about hope, trust, or your community. And so each of these things were encouraging the participants to connect with their communities, and by connecting with communities, that leads to building trust in those communities and the institutions that those communities support. So finally, we hope that really by doing all of these things, it would not only help us to break out of our own comfortable cycles that were kind of leading us toward apathy and despair, but especially to disrupt the assumption that nothing we do matters. We wanted them to have confidence that they could have an impact, a positive impact in the world. And we wanted everyone to know just how powerful and widely felt that these small hope-filled actions really would be. So these goals were not created in a vacuum. We gave everyone access to a little printout if they wanted to color in when they did each activity. But when we began the experiment, we started by asking each participant a variety of questions to measure how they were feeling in that moment, because we really wanted to capture that feeling. And then we also asked what they hoped to get out of that experience. So some of the responses that we got, I would like to form more deep and meaningful connections, have a more positive attitude about our country and where we're headed. Another participant said, I want to get out of my comfort zone, especially when it comes to connecting with others with whom I have some differences. On the next slide, we kind of made a word cloud using all the responses that people shared, and you'll see, obviously, hope is a big one. Some responses were just hope, hope, hope. You know, that's all I needed. Connection, community, talking about the future and the country and engaging in conversations. A couple other quotes. Someone said they wanted more understanding in what is needed for my community. Another was looking for inspiration and empowerment. And finally, a little more light and hoping to find a way to bring civility back into our conversations. So everyone was really looking for that sense of hope and community and connection. And they're really all intertwined. And it's been fun to see as the summer has progressed, to see that this was not an isolated thing with MWEG members, that this is a very shared experience that our whole country that was yearning for. So now let's get into the science of why we picked these things.
Yeah. So I'm Meredith. I'm the director of media literacy for MWEG, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the science behind hope and how important it is to our democratic institutions. And so research has shown that people have more trust in democratic institutions and hope that their own actions can make a positive difference when they do certain things. And having hope and trust in institutions is actually really important to maintaining our democracy, because if we don't have confidence in our system of justice, in our system of governance, things start to fall apart, and that's when some countries tend to slide into more authoritarian forms of government. So these are some things that have been proven to help people develop hope, and those are things like engaging with community organizations and events. So actually, like, getting out of our bubbles and meeting people and finding out what our community needs. And I know that can be harder in like the post-COVID age, but it's actually really important for us, especially someone like me who's naturally an introvert, to push ourselves to get engaged in person. It also helps when we focus on collective problem solving and group success over individual success. And that's something that we encourage people to think about as we were developing our curriculum on how to be a thoughtful voter, is thinking about what values you hold dear in society in general, and thinking about the collective. Seeing democratic institutions and resources as public goods rather than means to personal gain. That kind of piggybacks off the last one, in that we see democratic institutions and their ability to improve things, not that they're perfect at all, but that we can view the possibilities and the good that they can do. People who are hopeful and in their democracy also have spaces to articulate honest opinions, offer generous outreach, and identify shared goals. And I think that's really important. This is all based on research done by experts in democracy. And they say that it's becoming the case that, as we're tied to our phones more, as we go out less, there are fewer places where people can go and have conversations with people who might disagree with them. So it's really important for us to create those spaces for ourselves, where we can recognize the humanity in other people, and especially if their opinions are different, and where we can learn to work together. And then the last thing is developing skills to work across differences and govern themselves. And so that's very much tied to the point before, in that we need to learn how to talk to people who disagree with us. And in doing so, learn how to make things happen anyway, which can be really hard in today's government, I think. If you want to go to the next slide, Rachel. So we tried to design our hope experiment, and honestly, we tried to design all the things that we do in MWIG around those principles. And knowing that hope isn't just like a feeling that we have, it's something that we do. We can choose to have hope. There are the behaviors and attitudes that we can have to move our country forward in a positive way. And I love this quote from John Parsi. So there's actually a center for, sorry, I wrote center twice, Center for the Advanced Study and Practice of Hope at Arizona State University, which is cool. But he said this: hopeful people cannot just wish things into existence. Hope requires a person to take responsibility for their wants and desires and take action on working toward them. Optimistic people see the glass as half full, but hopeful people ask how they can fill the glass full. And so really our desire in the hope experiment was to help people to see that we are not powerless. We can take action and ask what we can do to shape our communities and our country to become a more peaceful and ethical place. And I believe next we are going to talk about some experiences from people who helped us out, from our Hope ambassadors.
Yeah, we had a handful of volunteers who, short-term volunteers this summer, who decided that they wanted to actively participate in the Hope experiment and share their experiences with others, mostly on MWIG Central, but also on their other social media platforms. And we had great experiences shared. Brenda Hall is one of our Hope ambassadors. I know Brenda is here. And also we had some other ambassadors. Lori is traveling this today, and she was going to try to be here, but we all know it's very hard to join a Zoom call when you are in a different time zone and you don't know what's going on. Where are we, right? Lori, if you're here, will you pop in and let us know? Okay, maybe Lori didn't make it. Brenda, are you able to come on camera and tell us an experience that you had with one of our Hope experiment activities and how it impacted you? Oh, I saw Brenda maybe come off mute, but then she went back on. Maybe Brenda is not in a place where she can do that. Okay, well, I will tell you, I was not an official Hope ambassador, but I was involved heavily in the program. So I'll tell you what one of my experiences was. I also run the Living Room Conversations program that we have here at MWAG. And so we're frequently holding these conversations that are about complex and nuanced topics. And we practice with specific guidelines for a conversation where we don't interrupt one another, where we give everyone equal time to participate. And where we're sharing deep experiences with some vulnerability, and often with people we've never met before. And so we don't know what their experiences are and how various our feelings are about a different topic. And all of that practice has helped me to be more aware when I'm interacting with people, just, with my neighbors, with my ward members at ward activities or in various places, to think about with more curiosity about their perspectives. And instead of jumping in to defend my perspective, I am often reminded of the principles that we practice in MWEG and in our living room conversations, of that we don't convince people by, trying to convince them, but we learn about their perspectives and we come to understand and care for each other and love each other more. And that love and care and community, that sense of community, is what makes an impact on the world. So I have frequently over this summer for the Hope Experiment had those reminders when I'm engaged in a conversation with someone of how I can ask questions and learn more about their perspective rather than jumping in with my own. We have a lot of other great MWEG members who are here in the audience. And I don't know if anyone wants to jump in and share an experience that they had with one of the activities.
Catherine, I'll share. Or Sharon, you can go ahead. Sharon, you go ahead, and then
I was just going to say, like Catherine, I'm a teacher, and so I frequently jump in and dominate the whole conversation. And so I've tried to do more listening and just asking, which is why I was trying to sit back and just listen and ask. And I thought, should I contribute? I fasted. One of the things I did as far as finding a news source, and I have had so much fun with my little coloring sheet. Oh my gosh, I'm finishing it up now. So I fasted from cable news sources for like the entire month of July. And I went to hopeful publications. I rediscovered the Christian Science Monitor. I love their journalism. I love how it's balanced. I love that it's based on a value. Like, we wrote this, and they'll tell you right in the middle of it. It has to do with resilience. This has to do with joy. So it's like, I always end up walking away from their articles feeling like there is so much good in the world because I'm focusing on it. One other thing, and then I'll be quiet, because yes, that's part of the practice too. I had a great conversation with a good friend who we share so much, but she confided that she was an atheist and didn't even believe in anything. But we found the way we show up in the world is exactly the same, even though we're coming at it from different beliefs. So it was just lovely to walk away from this conversation with someone who on one aspect is the complete opposite of where I am, but to recognize that we're both seeking to make our worlds better places, more hopeful places. So that was a conversation. It wasn't something that I was seeking. It just happened, and I thought, wow. And it happened during the month of July also. So
Sharon, I love those experiences, though. Thank you so much for sharing that. Rachel, you want to tell us something you experienced?
Sure. I was just thinking, because I've listened to the Proclaim Peace podcast, and I participated in watching the Hopeful Together with Jennifer Finlayson Fife last week. And I was thinking a lot about what some of the messages that spoke to me as I was applying this to the Hope Experiment ideas, and how a lot of this is to change us to be hopeful inside so that we can be good participants in our community, and for us to be curious. As Catherine, as you were talking about the living room conversations, a lot of that is curiosity of why other people or how other people come to their different views or the experiences that they've had. And I feel like a lot of the conversation in the podcast and with Jennifer Finlayson Fife is about that curiosity of looking inward so that we can act outward and be participants in conversations and in peacemaking and all these different things, and how we can do that. So the Hope Experiment has had me look at that through that lens of how do I participate in my community, or these different conversations, or with people, or whatever it might be, with that hopeful spirit that's inside me, right? So I've loved that it's kind of had me turn inside to be able to act outside. So that's just all I had to share.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yes, our live events this summer have been fantastic, and the Hopeful Together event last week was really wonderful. And if you missed that, you can view that on Central if you are a member of MWEG. We had earlier in the summer, we had Harry Boyd, who is the director for the Center of Democracy and Citizenship at the University of Minnesota, at one of these GROW events. And he said, in the spirit of our history's best political traditions, everyday Americans are demonstrating how a little civic hope can ignite a chain reaction of efforts to restore civic power, the kind of power that humanizes rather than corrupts, because it grows when shared. So we have had I have felt really great about this summer and our participation in our communities, and I hope that you have too. We want to share a little bit about our results from our pre to post surveys. We have some results that we'd like to share, how we have grown or changed over this period of time. Let's go to the first slide, the first graph slide. All right, so we can see that we had some significant feelings of negative feelings, worries, despair, concerns early in the summer, and we had not too much extreme confidence. And over the course of the summer, we've seen an increase in hope. Some things have changed in our country, some external factors have changed. And yet there are always concerns in the world, conflicts and wars and environmental devastation and things like that. There will always be those issues. And yet our reaction to those can change and improve. Some of our members responded with some ideas of exactly how they had felt like they'd grown in hope. One participant said, "I learned that there's so much I can do to proactively find hope in my life. It was also a great reminder of how much good there is in the world," like Sharon said about her news consumption. Another participant said, "I feel more patriotic and engaged than I used to, and more earnest in my efforts to connect to my community." And another participant said, "The podcast taping and ballot tour events in Utah made me feel like I was part of a bigger movement of democracy. So attending events in person has made a big difference for that member." Let's go to the next slide and we'll see more growth and change. All right, so this is a question about connecting with news and information, and how people felt that had an impact, whether their consumption of news and information helped them to have a positive impact on their community. And in our before results, we have we do tend toward thinking, yes, positive, having good quality information can help us have a positive impact. But after people had experienced what it meant to be conscious about gathering better quality information and using that to make a positive impact. So we had a lot of growth and change based on that. We have one of our participants said, let's go back for a second, Rachel. We're not quite ready for that yet. "It was wonderful to see how many people are doing the work of peacemaking. Polarized dehumanization of the other side is so loud and prevalent, but there are better ways to do the work of building a society where we can all thrive. And there are more people doing that work than I had realized. Starting these challenges encouraged me to fill my inbox with newsletters from organizations dedicated to bipartisan and high quality understanding and reporting. And I'm actually excited to read the news again." So that is some significant improvement and a great message for we should all feel that we're following good quality news sources that are making us excited to engage. Lisa, you want to jump in with our next slide?
Yes. Okay. So this next one, the question was, how much confidence do you have that people with political differences can work together effectively? And this one, you'll see there was not a whole lot of confidence in that at the beginning of the summer. And, that feeling still exists for sure among our participants, but you can see that upward trend. Some of the comments that people shared, they said, I'm more aware of my assumptions, attitudes, and actions that can lead to contention and division, and I'm working on avoiding them in my interactions with others. Someone else shared a story about something that happened in her community during the Hope experiment. She said, I recently encouraged my entire street to reach out to our city about concerns we've had regarding a change they just made on our street. It was scary. Not everyone agreed with me. Yet I encouraged all to share their opinions. I'm encouraged that we should all continue to work together for a result we can all feel good about. And I loved the honesty in that response, because it can be very scary, and there will be people who disagree with you, but it didn't deter her. She went forward with hope that they could still work something out together as a community that everyone could be happy with. So I love to see that bit in action. Okay, so the next one was asking about how much, Okay, the next one, how connected do you feel to your community as a whole? And again, you'll see the majority definitely felt more connected after participating in the experiment. One of our participants said, the antidote of anxiety is action, and that equals hope. Actually doing something rather than wringing my hands felt amazing. I am left feeling effective in my little corner of the universe and more connected to the people around me. For a lot of my Hope experiment activities, I purposely chose to go outside and take advantage of the summer weather. That was also so good for me. I was more likely to run into other people and away from my desk and screens. I love that example of where you actually place yourself makes a big difference in what you're feeling internally. So she, when she stepped away from those screens and took a minute to actually be out physically in her community, not just in online communities, how that really helped her to feel that connection closer. Another participant said, engaging in a meaningful conversation was one of the activities she participated in. She said, I decided to listen, to ask questions, to understand not only what she believes and why. And I discovered that we weren't as different as I thought. I did not need to correct her views. During the course of the conversations, I did add some details that helped her see nuance in a couple of issues, and she was open to that. I found we had more in common than I had thought. And that was so wonderful to read, because I know, and you can see in this chart, so many of us don't feel super connected to our neighbors, or don't feel super connected in our faith communities, or just in our cities as a whole. And so it was so great to see that these little simple actions can really turn that around, even without changing the actual perspectives and ideologies of the people, which is really important to remember. Okay, this is the last question that we asked, or measurement that we captured. How would you rate your desire to engage more fully in your community? And I would say that kind of remained about the same, which I thought was great. Well, I mean, there were less on the lower spectrum, so they did move up a little bit on that. But it seems overall that people are still very, they still have that strong desire to connect. And I love that. One of the actions that I took in the Hope experiment was reading a book that Catherine recommended to me called The Impossible Will Take a Little While. And it's a series of essays all about people doing incredible work. But one of the things in the book, he says, nothing cripples the will like isolation, and nothing buoys the spirit and expands the horizon of what seems possible like the knowledge that others who faced equal or greater challenges in the past continued on nonetheless to bequeath us a better world. So that first part, that nothing cripples the will like isolation, when we are out engaging in our community, it really opens our eyes, not only to the to the perspectives that other people are experiencing, but it allows us to see that we are not alone in this. He also described, he said there was a woman who was feeling she was going to be really impacted by an environmental change that was happening in their community. And he said she took the radical action of hosting a potluck, which I love the way that that was described, because it sounds silly. It doesn't sound like a radical action, but that's how she started. And it led to a huge movement because she took that radical action to gather people together to actually talk about something that was going to affect them. And they all felt that need to work towards something better. Okay, so we have one more quote that I really felt kind of summed up a lot of the feedback that we got from the Hope experiment. This participant said, "It has kept hope and connection at the top of my consciousness. When something happens that makes me feel angry or divisive, I very quickly remembered that I have a big role to play in the quality of my relationships and with people, and I can keep engaging with positivity and curiosity. That switch in attitude and focus has been so valuable for me." And I agree. I think above all, these actions were all helpful, but having this experiment in the back of my mind this summer absolutely affected my everyday and the way that I showed up in the world. And so I really appreciated that opportunity. Okay, now Meredith is going to help us see how we can carry this forward now.
Awesome. You can go ahead and advance. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap us up with some steps for moving forward. We don't want you to let go of your hope just yet. So we're going to talk about some things that you can do on your own, and also some things that MWIG has to offer you that you can utilize as you continue to move forward this election season. Go ahead and advance to the next one, Rachel. Thank you so much. Okay, so from MWIG, we have several resources. One that we mentioned earlier is this event that we had on August 22nd with Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife. And it was a great event. I learned a lot from it. There was a lot of great self-reflection for me about building relationships that transcend conflict. I know that there are a lot of people who have felt concerned. Sorry. My daughter's texting me. Let me turn that off. Who have felt concerned about how politics have affected their relationships. And they're not quite sure how to move forward this election season or how to repair those relationships. And this is really helpful with that. And you can find that now on our app, MWIG Central. And that is free for members to access. And speaking of MWIG Central, I mentioned before how important it is to be connected with community and to have places where you can share your opinions and work toward common goals, and even hear from those who have different opinions. And MWIG Central is just such a great resource for getting access to those communities, but then also to tools where you can learn how to have difficult conversations through things like living room conversations. You can get access to our educational materials and to chapters. And there's just a wealth of opportunity on our app. And unfortunately, like, Facebook has not been friendly to us lately. And that's one of the reasons why we are moving to an app. And so we would just really encourage you to get on there if you can. I know a lot of people don't like having an extra app, but I love MWIG Central and I highly recommend it. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And then I know some of you listen to Proclaim Peace. This is our most recent episode of Proclaim Peace podcast. It is such a great resource for hearing from other people, other experts in their fields, about concrete ways we can build peace in our lives and take action. And as we know, we talked about action builds hope. So this last episode with Julie Rose, I love Julie Rose. She talks about misinformation and ways to consume the news, and they all wrap it into our study this year of the Book of Mormon. And I would just highly recommend accessing that. You can get that on any podcast app you like to use. Okay, and then this last slide is just tips for you to utilize on your own. So the first one is get involved in the election as we move closer to it to the extent of your abilities. So what that means is like if you all you have time for or capacity for right now is to register to vote and to go vote, that's great. If you have time to be a poll worker or a poll watcher or a poll chaplain, that's amazing. If you can host a voter preparation party, which I know we'll be talking more about in coming weeks, we would love for you to do that. So any way that you can get involved in the election is going to increase your sense of hope in the process and is going to give you opportunities to interact with people and see all the good work being done to make sure this year's election is a success. So highly recommend that. Number two is setting boundaries around your news consumption. I know a lot of people get really overwhelmed by news and feel like it's a huge downer in their life. It's okay to set boundaries around it. It's okay to say there's only specific times of day you're going to consume the news. It's okay to take news off of your Instagram feed. You just really have to consider what's best for you if you're getting burnt out. Or you're at the risk of getting burnt out, if you feel like you're just sick of it. We don't want you to get disengaged completely forever, but it is okay to take a break and it is okay to set boundaries. Remember that relationships are more important than being right, and approaching others with curiosity and love is so important. So I don't mean that it's bad, like you should not want to be right, but that sometimes we're not going to disagree with other people. I don't know how many of you saw the abortion talks. It's called the basement talks now, but that's a proven example of how people on either side of a contentious issue became friends and developed relationships and loved one another, and they never changed each other's minds. And they were able to do that because they approached each other with curiosity and with love. And that's also something Dr. Finlayson 5 talks about in her event she did with us, is how important that is to remember the humanity of others, even when we just staunchly disagree with them. Curate your social media feed. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you are feeling overwhelmed, it's really important for you to take some time to take things off your social media feed that are not productive for you, or even just take a break. Those would be my two best recommendations. And then lastly, take care of yourself. Election season, it's funny, as we've been getting into the school year with my kids, I've had some opportunities to volunteer and I've had to turn them down and say, no, it's an election year. It's an election year. I can't volunteer right now. And I know for me, I work for MWIG, and so I'm really involved in MWIG's, all MWIG's doing to help prepare everybody for election season. But it is really important for everyone to take time to take care of yourself, to do things that you enjoy doing, to go outside. I think someone mentioned in their feedback on the Hope Experiment how they disengaged from their phone and got out of the house. All those things are really important. So make sure if you are feeling overwhelmed or burnt out, you take time to take care of yourself and do the things that you like to do.
Can I add one point to that, Meredith?
Absolutely.
This all goes back to a different book that I read for the Hope Experiment. That was like the history of hope. But he talked about how, oh, actually, no, this was from a different book. Anyway, he talked about how decades ago, they did a study and found that people who are involved in politics reported higher levels of feeling connection and happiness and motivation, and just about life in general. And then several decades later, the same survey results are vastly different, and people reported feeling that people who were actively participating, who self-reported that they were actively participating in politics, felt high levels of discouragement and loneliness and isolation. And they attributed that to the fact that a lot of the advocacy that we do is online or in the comment section, or trying to change minds that way. And I can just testify to the huge difference when you are in your community with people present physically working together to do something together. The feelings of hope and motivation and I mean that community care is a whole other form of self-care, and it's really incredible. So that's another way of taking care of yourself, is to being out there with other people. It really lifts your spirit.
Can I add one more comment?
Yeah.
As we fast from news and social media, I found part of what I did was to draw back and read biographies and times in the US history when there was division and lack of hope, to see that we can do this. We've had these situations like this before. We've overcome it. We've prospered anyway. That's given me hope by drawing back also and looking at a larger picture rather than just, the last decade.
I love that, Sharon. It's so true. And Lisa, I feel like you're telling me I do need to volunteer for the drama boosters, and we'll have to wait and see on that because I just don't know. They call themselves the drama mamas, and I'm not sure if I want to be one of those just yet. But before we finish, I just want to thank you all for participating. If you didn't get the chance to do anything this summer, don't feel bad about it. There's so many things that you can continue to do or try moving forward. We're going to be having a fall election preparation program that's going to launch next month, that we're just getting the details worked out on, and it's going to be so great. And we really want to help you move forward with hope as we get closer to November. Don't abandon it. Keep holding on to it. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and for participating. And if anybody has any questions or stories they want to share, we can do that really quick before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll share a couple of things. Sorry, I couldn't get my computer to work before, but I just wanted to thank everybody for doing this, because at the beginning of the summer, I was just kind of just meh when I would think about anything, and kind of just a little depressed about where we were, but it really made me get out of my bubble. And I actually did several things. I volunteer with an organization called Youth Lincoln. I took a bunch of kids on a humanitarian trip to Fiji. And we would gather at night and we would talk about different things that we were seeing going on during the day. And in Fiji, there's a lot of kind of blatant racism and segregation because England brought Indians over as slaves to Fiji to do the sugarcane fields and stuff like that. And so there's an Indian population and there's a Fijian population, and they still really don't get along. And the kids saw it, and we would discuss things that we would see throughout the day, and they were able to make the leap of okay, we're seeing these blatant things, but then they were able in our discussions to make the leap to just like micro racism things that they were experiencing at home that they could see back in the States, and how they thought that they could try to solve that and be better citizens in their schools and be more on top of that and that sort of thing. And just spending the 2 weeks with them and talking to them about all different sources of political or economical or sociology problems that we're facing at home, and what they thought their solutions could bring for that just brought a lot of hope for me. That I know a lot of people, they slam on the younger generations and they think they're lazy, but yes, I do know Sylvia. I went on the second trip. I was a tour leader on the second trip. Anyway, they just slam on this younger generation, but I have to tell you, there are so many kids that are really actively involved in their communities and they get it. And they're ready to take over. I have a lot of hope in our future just by spending time with them. And I'm glad that I got that experience, because I was getting pretty, I think I just let everything online get into my head too much. And by getting out, spending time with them, then I came home and I went to the M1 book club that we met in person. And I really enjoyed that, because I go to the ones that are online, but I enjoyed the one in person because we talked about a lot of other things. And I just, once again, and what made me feel like I'm not the only one, because I feel like a lot of times in my neighborhood, I am the only one. So that just like lightened things up. I got ideas for other podcasts that I can listen to that I've really, really enjoyed. And then the Olympics were so hopeful. I thought, I mean, just everything just kept lining up, and I was just kind of laughing at it. I could list several things. I took my family to see Hamilton and everything, and they hadn't seen it before. I hadn't, but just hearing them talk about things they learned from Hamilton, and about how, oh my gosh, it's always been a struggle. It's just always been a struggle. And we just have to keep the faith, and we just have to keep going, and we just have to keep building on what our ancestors have built on before. And so I can say my hope has incredibly improved over the summer, and it helped that Biden dropped out and Kamala's in too. But that was hopeful. Everything just kept going on. And I went to the ballot processing thing the other day, and I love that. I mean, that was great, because I have a lot of friends who, they think that ballot by mail is fraudulent. And now I can just actually tell them, and I can give them dates of when they can go see for themselves, and see how secure things really are. And so I was grateful for that opportunity too. So just thank you for providing like just list of things that we could do that made me get out of my bubble and really see that the world is good, and there's a lot of good people that are doing a lot of small things to make things better for everybody. And when we stand back from the big picture, I think that we get the gloom and doom from the media, and you just start looking at all of the details, you realize that we're still in a pretty good place.
Thanks, Brenda. That's great. I loved all of those things that you shared. I have a lot of hope in young people too.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for participating and being here with our Grow, and especially want to thank our Hope Experiment team, Catherine and Lisa and Meredith, and the other MWAG leaders who are behind the scenes supporting and cheering all of our members on. We, like all of these ladies said, we don't want this to end with summer. We hope that this has kind of been a change of thought that you can take as we enter into this election season, because things are going to start ramping up quickly here over the next couple months, and we want our members to be prepared and ready to dig in and be thoughtful and curious again about the candidates in your community on a state level, and also about those that will be representing us on a federal level. So we hope that this is just a piece of the puzzle as you prepare. And like they said, we're going in the next few weeks, you can watch on the Grow schedule, we will be kicking off our voter prep program. That's not what it's called, but that's essentially what we're hoping to prepare you for. So keep an eye out for that. But we hope you'll join us next week on our Grow. And until then, we'll say see you later.